You are listening to the Freedom Podcast with Van Moody. Our desire is that you begin to live in freedom every day. Freedom in your mind, freedom in your finances, freedom from the external pressures of life. Prepare to be transformed as we seek to be free, mind, body, and soul. Let's get started.
Hey friends, welcome to the Freedom Podcast. We are so glad that you joined us for this exciting episode. On the Freedom Podcast, we explore a variety of topics that are critical to life and purpose and fulfillment, living your very best life. This is part of the reason why each month we, on the Freedom Podcast, deal with the topic of financial freedom, because we know that's the elephant in the room. You can't even begin. I was going to say you cannot, but you can't even begin to really dig into freedom and purpose and fulfillment without dealing with financial freedom, because we know that the topic of finances, the challenge around finances, often are the biggest hindrances to people living their very best life. And so every single month, we dedicate an episode on the Freedom Podcast to financial freedom. I am joined by my co-host with the most, my brother from another mother, Pastor George B. Thompson, all the way from LA. How you doing, brother?
Man, I'm doing awesome. I'm excited about our show. And then, hey, we already had him hit it out the box, Bishop Salter. And I'm excited about what's coming and us having our conversation today.
Excellent. Well, we had Bishop Salter on in a previous podcast episode that was so phenomenal. We said we got to have him come back. So, Bishop Salter, you are a money maven, a guru, an example of walking out real wealth principles, and you are my brother and my friend. Thank you for coming back to the Freedom Podcast, my brother.
Thank you guys so much for having me. We had a ball last time, and I know we added some value and looking to do the same today.
Excellent. Well, I want to dig in the treasure trove of another topic that I would love for you and George to wax on, and that is let's talk about unleashing wealth for renters. There were a lot of things that we talked about in the previous podcast about 3 money moves, but then I began to think about the fact that we live in this time now where it is interesting that the younger generation coming behind us tend to be more apt to want to rent instead of buy. There have been numerous articles published, a lot of the data points out there, all pointing to the fact that more and more people in this emerging generation want to rent, or some have even said they don't know if they will ever buy a house in their lifetime. When you travel the country, as I know all of us have, and we start seeing all of the major developments that are happening, the majority of those developments are driven by apartments and rentals instead of ownership. And so it's a sign of the times. It's very, very interesting for me, because I was always raised to believe that you need to own something. And home ownership, I was always raised to believe that home ownership is a big part of creating wealth in our community. And not only was I taught that, but what's interesting with this notion of everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of people opting to rent more, is I struggle with it from a Jeremiah 29, concept, because in Jeremiah 29, a lot of us jump to the 11th verse, and we love to preach that and shout that and claim that. But prior to that, I believe God gives some really, really important wealth building principles. When he starts talking about building houses and settling down and planting gardens, he's talking about home ownership. He's talking about, business development and entrepreneurship. And so I've always looked at Jeremiah 29 as a verse as a chapter with verses that really speak to some key wealth creation principles. But now we're living in a time now where people are saying, well, I'm not sure about home ownership. I don't know if I want to build a house. Maybe I just want to rent one. And so what we want to talk about in today's episode is, in light of that, where do renters want to begin? How do the people that say, I'm going to rent, how do they begin to unleash wealth? And interestingly enough, Bishop Salter, you did a blog post in your Culture of Money blog about this topic. And let me just encourage everybody listening, if you are not already connected to the Culture of Money and following Bishop Salter, I mean, they release some absolutely incredible nuggets that I read that add a lot of value to my life financially. And so you wrote a blog about this, and I wanted you to come back on the show because there's so much more we needed to talk about. But I also wanted to ask you about this: where should renters start by way of trying to unleash wealth? And maybe they're renters that are listening to our podcast or watching this, or maybe they're parents whose
Exactly.
kids, are renters. What do they need to begin to think about as it relates to unleashing wealth?
Well, I'd like to start with first letting them know that I understand where that mentality comes from. And I don't, I'm not quick to judge it. I certainly agree with you on the biblical principle there in Jeremiah 29, Deuteronomy 1, where God takes Israel and tells them, go possess the land. So there's this early concept that God wants the land to be ours. He doesn't want us to rent it. He said, possess it. He wants us to have ownership. Possess is a word of ownership. It's not a temporal word. It's a word of permanency. And so there's certainly clear biblical precedent for that. But I think where some of the sentiment has come from, particularly for Gen Z, look at the climate economically that they've come of age in. Okay. They've come of age in what has been one of the most turbulent economic times, both good and bad. It's been, they're coming of age on the, they're born around the tail end of the great, not depression, but recession. Okay. So they're babies and they see the stress on mommy and daddy, and they saw everybody, lose jobs and lose homes, and, neighborhoods be repriced. And then they're growing up, and then they see this great pandemic where everybody's hoarding resources, and, there's price gouging and things are going through the roof. Then they see this economic expansion. Then they see this inflation and pull back. Okay. So psychologically, they're in a tough spot, particularly. Secondly, they have an argument to be made. Now, if you look at most of the latest economic studies, because we've been in a longer period of inflation than we have been historically for a long, last time been inflation this long, you're talking the 70s. Yep. Okay. What has happened is most of the economic data, if you say right now, today, does it make more sense to buy or rent? It probably makes more sense to rent. If you look at the economic data, economists who study this. Why? Well, Pastor George can talk about this on the West Coast where prices, or I can talk about New York on the East Coast where prices are insane. Yeah. Now we have a housing issue in America, which means, and I'm setting up where we're going with this. Right now, the reason why prices are high, we thought that as interest rates go up, that the prices of housing will come down across the country. And the reason why that hasn't happened, and there's only been a moderate price correction, is we have a supply issue. We have more people that need a home than homes built, than homes available. Secondly, we have older people, baby boomers, who won't sell their homes because they can't afford to buy the new home at the higher prices when they have a home either paid for or locked in at a 2.5% to 3% interest rate. So they're smart enough economically to know, well, so all those homes that should be on the market, creating supply. And as you know, as supply increases, prices go down. Okay. As demand is high, prices go up. So those markets, we're seeing those homes on the market. So we have an unprecedented situation, Bishop Moody, that these kids are growing up in, and other people are in as renters who have jobs. They're like, well, wait a minute. I just can't afford to move into that neighborhood, a neighborhood that they could have easily afforded 10 years ago. All right. And then on top of that, layered on top of that, interest rates at 6 to 7%. That's a lot.
It's doubling your mortgage, what you were paying
carry
before.
Costs for the home and everything. So if you say short term, right now, today, should I rent or buy? There's an argument, legitimate intellectual argument to be made to rent. Now, the biblical argument and the long-term argument are different. But from a principle that we introduced last time, we talked about time. We talked about being ahead, like Joseph, seeing the market before it moves. Long-term renting is not going to be the move. Historically, long-term, owning real estate or investing in the market are the best long-term results. And so certainly we want to understand that position, but we want to get them out of that short-term mentality so that even though to get them moving into the long-term mentality, and not being a renter is going to be the best way to build wealth long-term, hands down.
So with that in mind, what do you say to renters, in terms of maybe renting is where they are, or maybe it's a convenient first step right now in light of all of those indicators that you laid out? What should they be thinking about in terms of, unleashing wealth? I don't want to give away the keys that blessed me in your blog. But what do you say to those renters? We've already got the long-term strategy that, hey, long-term, that's not going to help you. But if they're trying to make moves right now, and maybe they're renting, or, maybe they don't have everything that they need financially to afford, maybe the home that they want, what are some of those moves that they need to be making right now?
Man, you just teed it up because you used the word that I really want to lean in on. You said they might not have the home that they want. Okay. And want can be a problem for wealth building. Because there's some things that we need versus some things that we want. So what I like to shift this conversation into is, what I tell renters right now is, if you can get off of where you want to live and you can get your mind on how you want to live long term, then the move that you need to make is obvious. Even at unprecedented real estate cost in terms of interest and housing prices, there's a move out here for you if you're bold enough to take it. And Pastor George knows this move. He's done it a million times. He teaches this move the same way. You got to get into, we call it house hacking now, but basically everybody that's a renter should be thinking about getting into investing in and living in a place that they own, and then renting out part of that place. And let me tell you a couple of ways to do this. Number one, multifamily properties. One, like a duplex, or, a side-by-side, 3 units, a 3-family, 2-family. Now, the reason why most people don't want to talk about this right now, particularly the younger ones, is because these properties are typically found in distressed neighborhoods. And that's the controversial piece, because back to that word want. But I don't want to live in that neighborhood. I got that. But the question is, do you want to build wealth?
Right.
And the real question is, are you willing to do what you need to do to get out of a rental situation where instead of you paying rent, making somebody else rich, somebody's paying your rent and building your equity and helping you get an asset to appreciate that later you can sell down the line. And then we can talk about one. I really, and I'm serious about this. I teach at my church. I teach every 20-year-old. Your first move should be to buy a property and house hack. Buy a property that you can live in, and somebody else can either live in. And these days we have all the social sharing and ride sharing and the sharing economy, renting out a room. You think about creative ways to buy it. You could do co-ownership models, whereas you have 2 or 3 family members or friends, and you create an LLC to buy the asset. So thus it's easier to sell out shares of the asset. 2 or 3, put the asset in LLC, buy that home, share bedrooms, have individual bedrooms, share common spaces, take the price of the asset down by dividing it amongst the 3 people to qualify for credit, 3 people's income, easier loan to approve. And yes, you can get that home, even if it's a large single family, and turn it basically into a multifamily. There are many different ways to splice it, but the simple point is, I think the move to make right now, undoubtedly, is to get off of the want conversation and get on what the need is. The move that you need to make is to get involved in multifamily property ownership, or dividing a single family property into multiple family units living in that property, so that you can build equity and have appreciation long-term and lower your carry costs because others are sharing the carry costs with you. That is a shrewd financial move, but it takes faith and it takes foresight. And by the way, last thing I'll say is this. People say, I don't want to live in that neighborhood. But those are the neighborhoods of the future where all the value is.
Right.
Because guess who's going to want to live in the neighborhood? Those neighborhoods that are distressed today are usually where the best telecommunication networks are. They have the best transportation networks. They're centrally located, and it's only a matter of time. And I'm sorry, then we're going to scream gentrification.
Right.
See, back to missing the move. We're going to miss the move because we don't want to live there. Somebody else is going to say, you know what? This old ratty house is certainly near the train station. They're going to anticipate the move. Then we're going to get upset when we could have made that move all along.
Right. You're getting in our wheelhouse right now. We're in Inglewood, and before there was SoFi Stadium, and then obviously our faithful Central, we own the Forum, that nobody wanted to live in Inglewood. We told people, they want to live in Beverly Hills. And I said, we might want to buy some up and coming like Beverly Wood. And I said, if you can't do that, do Inglewood. But Playa Vista and all those, where it's Silicon Beach down here, they're charging $7,000 a month for 2 and 3 units. So then people started coming to Inglewood, and then now we call it the SoFi tax, where they added $250,000 to the price of the homes. And we started telling people to buy 300 square foot. No, hear me out. 1,000 square foot, 900 square foot homes for like $400,000, and then on 8,000 square foot lots, and then build what's called a grandma house or a grandpa. Build a house on the back, or ADUs on the back. And we've been saying that for years. Now we're seeing that. So we're getting, the good news is, Bishop Salter, we're getting less pushback when they're saying distress. They're saying that's a distressed neighborhood, everything. Now it's all up and coming because we're seeing to this happen more. And back to the skating to where the puck is, we're seeing a lot of, we said the Wayne Gretzky, where he doesn't skate to where the puck is. He doesn't skate to where the puck is. He skates to where the puck is going. Is that you're seeing that. So we're getting less of that. And then also biblically and spiritually, we're telling what you said, 20-year-olds, we say young adults now because they want to be young adults, is tell them, you change the neighborhood. You change it. You and 5 other people come in here and you change the neighborhood then. Because that's the part that people are missing. They want to go to where everything's turnkey. No, you buy it distressed. Then you make it turnkey, and then you move on to another one, and you pull out a monopoly board and show them like, this is how it works. We're not starting at Park Place, but you're going to just own everything. So we're going to show them how to do that in some practical steps. But no, that's really good. We're getting a little less pushback though on the I don't want to live in that neighborhood, because now they're like, well, this is the only neighborhood you can live in.
Let me say a piece of that too, because you guys are killing it, right? You guys are doing it. I have another side of that story. I have regret financially because I had an opportunity to do this many, many years ago, and I did not have a Bishop Deandre Salter and a Pastor George Thompson in my life. So we're talking about probably, I was in college. I may have just graduated. I think I just graduated. I think I was starting seminary so I graduated college in 97. Now I'm dating myself. So yeah, that would have been 97, 98. I came back to Atlanta. I was in seminary working on my master's, and my father owned several properties around Atlanta. And my father came to me because I had an apartment in the nice part of Atlanta. I was a grad student, but still trying to, start living on my own. And my father came to me and he said, "Hey, I got a property in East Lake." He said, "I got a property in East Lake." He said, it's a ratty house. He says, "But I'm going to start fixing it up." He says, "Because something is coming to East Lake." And now, for those of you that don't know East Lake in Atlanta, it's everything that Bishop Salter described, right? It's near the train station. It's right near the inner city. It's everything that Pastor George Thompson just said. Back in the day, nobody wanted to be in East Lake, right? You know what I told my father, and I'm saying this out of regret because I want somebody who's listening to this to understand, if you don't do what these guys are telling you to do, you're going to miss an opportunity. I told my father, because he said, "I want you to go live in the house, stay there while I'm fixing it up." So all of the additions to the home and stuff that we're making, people won't come in and steal it. He says, "And then I'm going to sell the house. And if you go in and partner with me, He said, we'll go 50-50 on the proceeds. And you know what I told my dad out of my own ignorance? I said, man, I ain't going to live in East Lake. Folk go over there to get killed. I'm not going to live in East Lake. I said, no, sir, I'm not doing it. He said, you're not going to help me? I said, absolutely not. I'm going to stay over here in Marietta in my comfortable development with my Starbucks and everything on the corner so I could try to feel bougie. And you know what? That was the worst mistake I ever made, because my father sold that house for an insane amount of money. And then he had the nerve to rub it in my face after he closed on the house.
Wait. He didn't rub it in your face. You rubbed it in your face. He called
I
you.
did.
He did not rub it.
did.
I'm in your dad's defense now. He didn't rub nothing in your face. He rubbed an opportunity in your face. Okay,
He sure did.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Man, he came home that day after closing and showed me all that money. And he said, now half of this could have been yours if you would have gone over there and lived in that house. So that's a cautionary tale for somebody, because I learned a big lesson that day. And that was, you know what? I got to see beyond what it looks like now, because you go over there now and you know what anchors East Lake? The famed golf course where Tiger Woods played, and where they have, one of the PGA events each year. And man, that area now has totally been changed and transformed. But once again, you have to be willing to go into those areas prior to, everybody else coming in and flipping that area, because those are the opportunities to make that kind of money. So I'm glad you guys shared that. I just wanted to share the other side, because I know we've got listeners that are like, man, I don't know about that. Well, listen, I'm here to tell you, if I could go back in time, I would have done it differently.
But right, can I tell you give you a compliment though, a little bit about that is this. First of all, your dad did something that we talked about on our show, and then Bishop Salter, I'll let you speak next, add on this if you want to next. We talk about building generational wealth. So he modeled for you. Do you remember what we talk about with our kids? So we've been talking about this. And we model for our kids. Like we show them, we bring them over to my units and I show them, hey, it's raining outside. Hey, so right now we have to deal with this plumbing issue right now. You know what I mean? Like instead of having the contract, I meet the contractor out there to say what we're going to do. And so that's modeling. So your dad did two things to build generational wealth. Two things have to pass. One is knowledge, what he was going to do, and the other is finances. He was modeling for you. Where I applaud you is, number one, you could tell the story, and then you learned from it, and then now you're making different decisions, not just keep doing the exact same thing. So in that area, Bishop Salter?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say is this. I'm glad you told that story, because I think the other part of the message to the audience is this. It's never too late, right?
Yeah.
Because while you may have missed that move, the beauty of this conversation concerning, how to get out of the rental market and getting to the ownership market and create income and wealth, because that's what real estate does. It's a two-pronged effect, right? You have the wealth accelerator effect and you have the income accelerator effect, because properties can generate income and they can have appreciation. But it's never too late, because there are markets everywhere. So I want to say this. Part of the problem also is our faith. We only have faith for what we can see, and not faith for what we can't see, which defeats the point of faith.
It's not faith at that point.
That ain't faith if I got to see it to believe it. It's antithetical. Right. So watch this. Let me tell you why I'm saying that. Let me give you some hot markets, guys, because maybe this move for you is you're renting in Birmingham or you're renting in Los Angeles or New York. But that don't mean that you have to make your financial move for wealth in Birmingham, Los Angeles, or New York. There are markets to the day right now that are undervalued and are value add markets. I'll give a perfect example. Market that I've been studying now for the last year. This one's free. It's a real estate market, and I'm telling you, this whole city is undervalued. And I'm all over Rochester, New York. Rochester, New York. Why? It's an old city, old industrial city. There are a lot of multifamily homes in Rochester. You can still get two-family investors that investors haven't swapped up. Why? Because they are dead to the deed. But you can get them at really depressed prices still. You can add value to them. So even if you don't want to live, I don't want to live there. Okay. But the property values may still be enough where with with 10 or 20% down, if you can save 10 or 15,000, you can get a house and still have enough money to do some cosmetic fix up and put a renter in there and still get on this plan to get out of renting. So even if you don't want to house hack and live in it, you can find a market value. You may say, well, I don't live there. How do I manage it? Real simple. It's called a property manager. You can get somebody to manage it for you. And it may be worth the fee to eliminate the headache, and certainly it may lower your returns, but a great property manager is worth their weight in gold. I remote invest in all kinds of markets like Rochester, different areas outside of Detroit. I'm all involved.
I'm sorry. Can I interrupt?
Alabama, everywhere.
I'm trying not to interrupt you, but I just have to. And then can people type in the chat, and then Bishop Moody let us know if we want to do just a show on this. Let me know if we just want to do a show on this, because
we probably need to.
This, you said property management. Let me just tell you something. I did a seminar 10 years ago called Money in the Mailbox, I showed you where people mailed you the checks. I thought, you know what I thought you were going to say, Bishop Salter, when you said a property manager? You can do 70% of 80% of our property management, Deandre Salter, I need a fist bump from you in advance, is that we do it through technology. Like, now with Ring, like you can open the door without being standing there. You know that you can call a contractor to come over and fix the property. Then they call you on FaceTime and show you what they're going to do. Then they send you back a quote and you sell them the money. Like you used to have to, Bishop Moody, when I came to your church and ministered, I was managing a property and managing it. And I was in Birmingham, Alabama, and I was managing LA, because you can use technology. Like 10, 15 years ago, you couldn't do that. You can't unlock a door or I can open my garage door right now. You know what I mean? Like you can use technology. Second thing about when he used Rochester, New York, is that since the pandemic, it's shifted places where people can live anywhere now, and people retire there, and look at the hubs and the companies that people retired from, and that you can rent out to them. And there's a lot of opportunities I like to talk about where you can, let me use your word, add value to the property. But any more on that, we need to do an entire show on that, because you said Detroit, all these other areas, is that now, I'm not saying the United States is flat, but you can work for a company in anywhere and live anywhere. And because I'm sure most of you have employees that don't live in, you have employees, right, Bishop Moody, that don't live in Birmingham that are staffed, because they can do that. So that flattens the playing field as far as finding opportunities. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I had to say that, Bishop Salter. Go back.
No, listen, 100% accurate. And I think so. This conversation about building wealth as a renter, it really begins there, right? So it's about shifting from the short term, and all is not lost. You didn't miss the last. You may have missed one opportunity, but there are markets, and I guess the message, at least in this first piece, is that the market may not be where you are. The market may be distressed, but if you're focused on how I can build wealth, then the move is obvious. And the sooner you get started, the better. It's better to do this while you're younger, but it's also an opportunity at every interval, 30, 40, 50, 60. This strategy that we're talking about, I call it house hacking, which is the basic fundamental principle of either living in the property and having renters in the same property I live and somebody's paying me rent, or taking a large house, as Pastor George mentioned, and bringing in other tenants where we share common spaces, that 3,000, 4,000 square foot house. And that could be in a better neighborhood potentially. But because I'm doing that, or the newest iteration of that, co-ownership models, where I'm using an LLC as a legal business entity, putting the home in the name of the LLC, and we own shares of the LLC. Thus, we can exchange partners whenever we need to. We can talk all day about it, but it still begins with the need to move out of rent, because rent long-term, it's just not going to be the best use. We can talk later about if you're going to stay a renter, what you need to be doing, because there's only one thing you need to do. You can't stay a renter and not do this thing. I don't want to talk about it yet, though.
All right. Well, let's pause for a second and let's hear from one of our sponsors. But you have been checking out the Freedom Podcast with my guest, Bishop Deandre Salter, my co-host, Pastor George B. Thompson. We'll be right back.
Introducing A Year to a Better You, the transformative devotional that guides you on a year-long journey of self-discovery. Each day, you will learn more about God, His Word, and yourself. A Year to a Better You features a daily devotional and a soap journal perfectly paired to help you learn more about transformation and transparency as Christ followers, your freedom and identity in Christ, and most of all, the power that you have because of his faithful love. Visit vanmoody.org today and start your journey with a new year to a better you.
All right, family, we're back. The Freedom Podcast, we are leaning into keys for unleashing wealth. And we started talking about if you're a renter, but in truth, a lot of these keys apply whether you are renting or not renting. But Bishop Salter, before the break, you kind of teased that there's another big key that we need to know. And so I got to hand it off to you because I am excited to hear about it. Now, I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm not sure. So let me see if you're going to say what I think you're going to say. What's this other big key if we're going to unleash wealth for renters or even for those that are non-renters?
Well, you read the blog, so you have a preview of it. But here's the reality. You can't not own real estate and not – you only get one not. So in other words, let me explain what nots are. You only get one not. I can only not do one thing, but I can't not do this and then not do that and then not do this. That will lead you on the path to financial disaster, and you'll have a lot of regret. So, okay, you say to me, you're saying to me, I'm not ready to own a real estate. I don't want to own real estate. Owning a house is a scam. Whatever else you read out in the article, it no longer makes sense. I get it. I've heard it all. Okay, fine. I'll concede. Maybe owning real estate is for you, but you can't not own real estate and not have any investments.
Come
period.
on.
If you're not going to own real estate as an investment, you've got to own an investment, which means, by the way, you need to pick an asset class. What is the most logical asset class for a renter? Equities. You've got to build an investment portfolio because you can't not own real estate and not own investments and not own art and not own. You can't just own jewelry. You can't just rent and own jewelry. You can't just rent and own a car. You can't just rent and own clothes. You can't just rent and own Louis. That's wonderful that you're making all those folks rich. I said too many knots is the road to financial disaster.
Yeah.
Which you have to pick an asset class. And here's the thing. So real estate appreciates roughly 3.8% if you look over the long term historically. All right. But the reason why that's somebody, oh, well, why would I want to invest money? I can get that in a savings account. Well, historically, you can't really get that in a savings account, only during this present period. But also what that doesn't account for is all the income, all the tax advantages that in addition to that 3.8% that you get. So real estate's a sound historical investment. Okay, you don't want to do that. But you can't tell me that you also don't want the historical 10+% of a gains and appreciation in the market. So my simple message is, here's how you get started today. Go out, get a financial planner. I'm going to say it again. Get a financial planner. Renters should start with a financial planner. Renters should not start trying to pick stocks by themselves and listen to Uncle Bobo, who told them about something that he heard at work. You need to get a professional.
Yeah.
Okay. And you need to sit down with that professional and say, here's my plan. I don't really feel like I want to invest in a house, but I want to build a portfolio, and you can make your investments mirror real estate. You can say, I want an income portfolio, or you can say, I want a portfolio that's going to appreciate, moderately aggressively over this period of time, 10 years, and let that financial planner work with you to put together a plan and to get that investment in the market to look like something that's going to achieve your long-term goals. Mm-hmm. So yeah, once again, I start with, but these finance guys, they keep saying the same thing. They keep saying investing. And you said that last episode, but you didn't do it after last episode. So I'm saying it again this episode.
Yeah.
Get in the market.
I want
to be a renter.
I want to throw in one more thing that you said last time, is that when you sit down with a financial advisor, and then also I admit I'm a little biased, but I shall say that you want to, first of all, just a couple things. Find out what type of client that the financial advisor works with. Like if he only works with people that have $2 million and you don't have $2 million, then that's not a good fit for you. So make sure he has that, and that he or she has that. But then also make sure that you're setting up the plan of what we just talked about. That they have a process of that. Second thing, there's just three things. The second thing is also that he or she talks to you about risk, and then they're educating you, like they're showing you how to do it. And then the fourth thing, which is really important, the third thing that's really important is this, that find a financial advisor that's actually done it. Sometimes out there, and I'm not throwing any shade on things, you'll meet people that are telling you something out of a book or different things like this. Like when you're talking, you're watching us talk, everything we're telling you, like we did, like, as a financial advisor, like I'm showing, like, these are, I'm asked that quite often and everything. I say, they'll say, are these investments, or George, you own this investment? I said, not only do I own this, my kids have this. And that's a whole nother level. This is that we've done the research. So find someone that is very, competent in different things like this. And then also, if you have any questions like that, I also put my information will be at the bottom of the chat, just to even help you find someone, or if we, or we can help you either way. But I just want to make sure that you look at those three things before you make a decision on a financial advisor. Go ahead. Bishop?
Well, Bishop Salter, that's also part of the reason why I think your wealth track is so critical, because I think, George, when you talk about finding a financial advisor that can educate you, I think you got to have some base of understanding yourself, because if not, you won't have any way of understanding the terminology,
Right.
understanding some of the strategy. So a part of that education process, we have to take ownership for. We can't just assume when it comes to our money that somebody that we hire, that they're going to have our best interest at heart, right? And so I'm not trying to throw shade at financial advisors, but I am saying that you've got to be your own advocate. You have to be actively engaged and not just walking out the plan that somebody else created, but you need to be knowledgeable enough so that you can help chart your own course. And we've talked about this before, being an advocate starts with, where do you want to be? And hopefully, your goal, if you are a renter, is not that I want to rent for the rest of my life. Maybe your goal is, okay, I'm renting now, but I really want to, begin this wealth journey, which is why not only these tips, but educating yourself and taking advantage of things like the 21-day fast start or the culture of money. But also this wealth track curriculum is so important. Bishop Salter, to tell our listeners, particularly, what are some of the things that they can take away from this wealth track, and why you have such a burden to create it?
Well, first of all, thank you for that, because actually, if we had time, you already set it up. If you said, hey, what's one more thing? I would have went right there to the best thing you could do as a renter right now, or anyone, is get a financial education, because some of what we're talking about is going to make a lot more sense when you get to a basic level of financial proficiency. Now, here's why. Here's why this is near and dear to my heart. We don't have financial confidence when we're making financial decisions. And the reason why we don't have financial confidence is because we don't have financial competence. Okay. So our confidence is affected by our competence, and our competence is affected by our knowledge. So the more I know, the more competent I feel. The more competent I feel, the more confident I feel. Okay. And so that's why it's near and dear to my heart, because I was bankrupt. When I was young, I'm talking to that 20-year-old. When I was in my 20s, I was bankrupt. And so I went from being bankrupt to blessed beyond measure. And so I created this course with that person in mind, who I'm assuming you're starting from ground zero, just like I did. But I'm giving you enough in the course to take you from ground zero. So even if you're beyond ground zero, there's something in it for you. And it's basically a progression of learning how to take control of my habits, change my behaviors, learning how to create margin for myself, and learning what to do with that margin. And we teach you in that course how to invest in stocks, how to invest in real estate, and how to invest in the third asset class, which is the business ownership, because those are the three segments and the three classes that have historically created the most wealth for people who were not born into wealth. Okay. Specifically, real estate, business ownership, and investing in the market. Those are the three asset classes that have created the most wealth for people who were not born with wealth. And so that's the move that anybody can make. That's the low bar, that if you're a renter and you say, well, I don't want to be in the real estate. I'm not going to invest in real estate. I'm not going to invest in the stock market. I told you too many knots to be the financial ruin. Don't not invest in your own financial education.
Right. And what I think is really also important is also that now that what you're doing and what we're doing, I think is really good, is this also can be generational. Because see, you should, I'm talking to all our listeners, is that you not only want to learn this for you, but you also want to learn this for your family, because maybe you're renting because your mom, other people in your family rented. So then now you can learn these skills and then also transfer, also teach your entire family. Like start having, we call them kitchen table conversations, where you sit down with your family and say, hey, look, let's look at if we owned a home. And then like what he said earlier, when he said LLC, limited liability corporation, when you're sitting down with their family, like, hey, let's us two partner and let's buy a unit together, or let's do this, or let's look at how this can be generational as well, with all the things that you're teaching with the wealth track. Because two things have to transfer, not just money, but also the wisdom. Right. And that's why you want to learn that through the teaching and have financial education.
Yeah, man. Wow. What an incredible episode. I am full of some additional questions. In fact, Bishop Salter, I've got a great question that I want to tee up for our bonus episode for our partners. We're going to get into that culture of money, because you started talking about the competence versus the confidence. And I know that that's really a lot of what you get into with that whole culture of money and the mentality that we have to have. So I want to talk about that. But hey, we're out of time on this episode. Where can our listeners find you, Bishop Salter, get more information about the wealth track, the culture of money, and all of the things that you do to not only help us grow wealth, but to get the resources and education we need to do so?
Appreciate you visiting us at DeandreSalter.org. DeandreSalter.org is the one-stop place for everything. And of course, I'm on social media at Deandre Salter, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the social media channels, you'll find me under that same tag.
Incredible. George, where are you, bro?
I am. You can get me at georgebthompson.com. Also, I can't find George.com, but also I'm on all social media as well. Facebook. I got a TikTok where I'm the world's greatest dad at 1/3 the price, and then also YouTube. So check me out.
Incredible. Well, friends, listen, we want to thank you for being a part of the Freedom Podcast. More information about this incredible podcast can be found at vanmoody.org. And you can always check me out and find out more about me and other resources that we have to add value to your life. This has been a great podcast episode. And if you've been blessed, if you like it, if it's added any value, be sure to like our podcast, share it with other individuals, invite them to check out the Freedom Podcast, because every single month we're dropping new episodes that we know will add extreme value to your life. Well, we hope that you'll join us next month. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Freedom Podcast. If you find inspiration, education, or fulfillment in our episodes, consider becoming a partner. Your donation ensures that we will continue delivering quality content alongside some of today's leading experts. Connect with us by becoming a Freedom Friend, a Freedom Champion, or a Freedom Funder. Together, we will continue to produce content that provides hope and healing. Thank you. Your generosity is appreciated.